The train hissed as it slowed, metal screaming against metal, steam curling into the cold air like a warning she didn't yet understand. Eleanor Whitmore clutched her single leather suitcase tighter, her knuckles white, her breath shallow. She had crossed an ocean for a man she had never touched, never heard speak, never truly known, only words on paper, neat and careful, promising safety, purpose, and a future. A mail-order bride, they called her. She had hated the phrase. It made her feel like an object, a delivery, something wrapped and shipped. But hunger had a way of humbling pride, and loneliness could silence even the loudest objections. After her parents died within the same winter, after the factory closed, after the landlord nailed the eviction notice to the door, Eleanor learned that survival did not always look dignified. So she answered the advertisement. Widowed farmer seeks wife. 7 children, stable land, honest life. 7 children had startled her. Widowed had made her pause. But honest life, that had reached something deep inside her, something tired and aching. The letters that followed were brief but respectful. The handwriting was strong, steady. He spoke of the land, of responsibility, of the need for a woman who understood that love could grow slowly like crops in stubborn soil. He never used flowery words. That made her trust him. Now she stepped off the train into a town so small it felt unfinished. No one stood waiting with flowers or a sign. No nervous husband shifting his hat. No curious townsfolk whispering behind gloved hands. Just the wind, sharp and biting, and a station platform dusted with frost. Eleanor swallowed. Perhaps he was late. She waited. Minutes passed, then longer ones. The station emptied. The conductor gave her a puzzled look before climbing back aboard. Eleanor's heart began to pound, not with fear yet, but with uncertainty. She approached the station master, a thin man with tired eyes. I'm here to meet Mr. Thomas Hale, she said softly. From Willow Creek Farm. The man froze, his face changed in a way that made Eleanor's stomach drop. Oh, he said quietly. You're her breath caught. Her? He removed his cap, rubbed his forehead. Miss, I'm real sorry. Thomas Hale passed away 3 weeks ago. The world tilted. Eleanor felt as though the ground had been pulled from beneath her feet. Passed away? Pneumonia, the man explained. Sudden, fast. He had left behind 7 children and a farm already struggling under winter's weight. The letters Eleanor received, the last one promising he'd meet her at the station, had been written just days before he fell ill. She stood there, the truth pressing in from all sides, cold and suffocating. No husband, no plan, no home, just 7 children who had never asked for her. I should go back, Eleanor whispered, though she knew she couldn't. Her money was gone. Her old life was gone. There was nothing to return to but empty rooms and closed doors. The station master hesitated. Someone should take you out to the farm. The children. They're alone most days. Neighbors help when they can. Alone. The word echoed in her chest. The wagon ride to Willow Creek Farm was long and quiet. Snow blanketed the fields, turning the land into something both beautiful and unforgiving. Eleanor watched the horizon, her thoughts tangled in grief that wasn't hers, fear that was, and a strange pull she couldn't explain. The house appeared suddenly, weathered wood, sagging porch, windows dark as closed eyes. 7 figures stood on the porch. They didn't wave, they didn't smile, they simply stared. Children ranging from perhaps 4 to nearly 15, lined up like soldiers bracing for bad news. The oldest boy stood slightly forward, jaw tight, shoulders squared as though he believed standing strong might protect the others. When Eleanor stepped down from the wagon, her boots sinking into snow, none of them moved. She realized then that this moment would define everything. I'm Eleanor, she said gently, forcing steadiness into her voice. I was supposed to marry your father. A flicker passed through their faces. Confusion, anger, hope, fear, all colliding at once. He's dead, the oldest boy said flatly. His voice cracked despite his effort. So you can leave. The words struck her harder than the cold. She could leave. She should leave. But she didn't. Instead, she walked toward them, slowly, deliberately, stopping just short of the porch. She lowered herself so she wasn't towering over them, her breath fogging the air. I know, she said, and I'm so sorry. The smallest girl clutched the sleeve of the child beside her. One of the boys scowled. Another looked down, boots scraping the wood. I don't know what I'm supposed to be to you, Eleanor continued. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. But tonight, you shouldn't be alone. Silence stretched, heavy and fragile. The oldest boy searched her face, as if trying to catch her in a lie. Finally, he stepped aside. Fine, he muttered, but don't make promises. The house smelled of cold ashes and old grief. There was no warmth, no laughter, only survival. Eleanor set down her suitcase, rolled up her sleeves, and lit the stove with hands that trembled but did not stop. She cooked with what little there was. She cleaned, she listened, she said nothing about staying and nothing about leaving. That night, as the children lay packed into beds too small, Eleanor sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the flame in the lamp. She had arrived as a bride. She had found no husband, but 7 children slept under the same roof as her, breathing softly in the dark. And somewhere deep inside her, a truth began to form, quiet, terrifying, undeniable. She had not come here by mistake. Morning came without mercy. Eleanor woke to the sound of coughing, deep, ragged, coming from somewhere beyond the thin wall. She sat up instantly, heart racing, the weight of yesterday crashing back into her like a wave. This was not a dream. She was not a guest. She was a stranger in a house filled with children who did not ask for her and did not trust her. She dressed quietly and followed the sound. The youngest boy lay curled beneath a blanket far too thin for winter, his face flushed, lips pale. Eleanor knelt beside him, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead. Fever, high. Panic flared, but she pushed it down. Panic never helped anyone. She stirred the embers in the stove, heated water and tore strips from one of her own worn dresses for compresses. The other children hovered in the doorway, silent and watchful. What's his name? Eleanor asked gently. Samuel, the oldest boy said. He gets sick easy. Do you have a doctor? She asked. He shook his head. Pa handled that, when he could. Something tightened in her chest at the word Pa. She nodded and worked steadily, speaking softly as she went, not to Dama. ND trust, but to earn it inch by inch. By mid-morning, Samuel's breathing eased. Eleanor exhaled slowly, only then realizing she had been holding her breath. The children watched her differently now, not warmly, not gratefully, but with attention. The farm demanded more than kindness. The barn roof sagged under the weight of snow. Animals needed feeding. Water froze in buckets. Eleanor learned quickly that grief did not pause responsibility. She asked before acting, listened before deciding. When she did take charge, she did so quietly, without raising her voice or her authority. She cooked what she could, mended what she knew, and admitted freely what she did not. That honesty mattered. The second night, a knock came at the door. A woman stood outside, wrapped in a heavy shawl, her face sharp with concern and judgment both. I'm Mrs. Carter, she said. Neighbor. She looked Eleanor up and down. We heard Thomas's bride arrived. After, Eleanor did not bristle. Yes, ma'am. Well, Mrs. Carter said, stepping inside without invitation. Folk are wondering what you plan to do. Eleanor met her gaze steadily. I plan to take care of the children. Mrs. Carter's eyebrows lifted. They aren't yours. No, Eleanor said softly. But they're here. The woman studied her a long moment. Then she sighed. You'll need help. Pride won't keep a roof from collapsing. I know, Eleanor replied. That night, Eleanor overheard whispers. The children argued in low voices, fear slipping through their anger. She'll leave, one said. They always do, said another. Eleanor stood in the hallway unseen, the words cutting deeper than any accusation could. She didn't interrupt. She didn't promise. Instead, the next morning, she rose before dawn and began repairing the fence in the freezing cold, her fingers stiff, her breath shallow. When the children woke, they found her there, working far. Eiling trying anyway. The oldest boy approached slowly. You don't know how to fix that, she smiled faintly. Then you'll have to teach me. His surprise was unmistakable. Days turned into weeks. Winter pressed harder. Food ran low. Eleanor sold her last good coat to buy medicine seed. When one of the girls woke screaming from nightmares, Eleanor sat with her until the terror passed. When tempers flared, she did not punish blindly. She listened. Not all of them softened. One night, after a particularly harsh day, the oldest boy finally exploded. "You're not our mother," he shouted, fists clenched, tears streaking his face. "You don't get to pretend." Eleanor didn't flinch. "I know," she said, "and I won't pretend." The boy broke then, sobbing with the force of months of swallowed grief. Eleanor held him without claiming him, without taking what he wasn't ready to give. That was the night something shifted. Spring came reluctantly. Crops struggled. Eleanor worked until her hands blistered and bled. She learned the land, the children, their silences and their storms. Then the letter came, an official notice. The farm was behind on taxes. If payment wasn't made by summer's end, Willow Creek would be seized. Eleanor read the letter 3 times, her pulse roaring in her ears. 7 children, no husband, no legal claim, no safety net. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer. The children did not need fear added to what they already carried. That evening, Eleanor stood alone at the edge of the field, watching the sun sink into the earth. The weight of choice pressed on her shoulders, heavier than any burden she had yet known. She could still walk away. No one would blame her. But as she turned back toward the house, light glowing through the windows, she heard laughter, real laughter, fragile but alive. And she knew, if the world was going to take this place from them, it would not do so without a fight. The summer heat arrived like a reckoning. By the time the wheat stood tall and pale, Eleanor's hands were scarred and strong, her back a map of aches she carried without complaint. She rose before the sun and slept after it sank, measuring time not by hours, but by what still needed doing. The children moved around her now without flinching. They brought her tools without being asked. They waited for her at the table. They listened. They still did not call her mother. That word hovered, unspoken, like a bird none of them dared to reach for. The notice from the county burned in Eleanor's pocket every day. Taxes due, land to be seized, no extensions, no mercy. She had written letters to distant relatives of Thomas's she found listed in an old Bible, letters that returned unopened or not at all. She took in mending from neighbors, sold eggs, bartered bread. It was not enough. One evening, Mrs. Carter came again, this time with 2 men from town. They stood in the yard, hats in hand, eyes careful. "There's talk," one of them said, clearing his throat, "that the children might be better placed elsewhere. Families willing to take 1 or 2. The words fell like stones. The oldest boy, Jacob, stepped forward, shoulders squared the way his father's must have been. "We're not going anywhere." Eleanor felt the heat rush to her face. She could have shouted. She could have pleaded. Instead, she stepped between Jacob and the men. "They're staying," she said quietly. "All of them." "And you?" Mrs. Carter asked gently. "You have no legal claim." Eleanor nodded. "Then I'll make one." That night, she told the children the truth. All of it. The taxes. The risk. The possibility that the farm might be taken. She did not soften the edges or hide behind hope. She laid the truth on the table and let them see her hands shake as she did it. "See." Lents followed, long, terrible. Then Jacob spoke. "What do we do? Not what will you do. What do we do?" Eleanor swallowed. "We work. Together, they did. The older boys took jobs in town after chores. The girls learned to sell preserves and stitched quilts late into the night. The younger ones gathered kindling and learned responsibility before childhood had finished with them. Eleanor negotiated with the bank, stood her ground with men who underestimated her, and refused offers that would split the children apart. When the final week came, the money was still short. Eleanor did not sleep. Before dawn on the last day, she packed her suitcase, the same one she arrived with, lighter now in possessions, heavier in meaning. She left a note on the table, every word weighed with care. She intended to walk to town and accept a position she'd been offered weeks ago. Housekeeper, live-in, respectable. The wages would cover the taxes. The farm would be saved. She would not be there to see it. As she opened the door, she found all 7 children standing there. Jacob held the note, his hands trembling. "You weren't going to tell us." Eleanor knelt, tears blurring her vision. "I didn't want you to feel you owed me." The smallest girl stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Eleanor's neck. The others followed, clinging as though letting go might make her vanish. "Don't go," someone whispered. Eleanor closed her eyes. For the first time since she arrived, she let herself cry. They went to town together. The banker counted the money twice. The receipt slid across the desk. The farm was safe. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, warm and forgiving. Eleanor stood there, unsure what came next. Jacob cleared his throat. We talked. The children lined up, not like soldiers this time, but like a family bracing for something precious. You didn't give birth to us, Jacob said, voice steady now. But you stayed, you fought, you chose us. He hesitated, then said the word they had all been holding. Ma. The sound shattered something in Eleanor's chest and rebuilt it all at once. She pulled them close, 7 hearts beating against hers, and understood that the promise she came seeking had been kept, just not in the way she expected. She had arrived as a bride with no husband waiting. She stayed as a woman who became exactly what 7 children needed, not by blood, but by love.